Hello and welcome to Velocity Tuning. Today's video is a buyer's guide for the F10 M5. Interested in one of these cars but want to know what to look out for? Well, keep on watching, we're about to go through it all. First thing, like most cars, we want to start with a service history. With an M car, it has a running in service. That's really important. Make sure it's had its running in service, and if you're trying to get an indication on how the car's been looked after, make sure the other services have been done on time. The servicing goes a bit deeper than that as well. You may find that someone at 50,000 miles is giving it a gearbox service. Have they given it a diff service? Or have they gave it interim services in between the recommended BMW ones, giving an indication that they really care about the car and they've probably looked after it. Not only is the service history important, but the servicing that's going to be due is also important. How long have you got until the next oil change? Are the coils and the plugs old? Has the brake fluid been done? It's real easy to find that a car could be due a major service and could really bump up what you've got to put into it to get it as a good running example. Building on what's due on the next services, there's some maintenance that can be pretty important for these cars as well. When they start to approach 70,000 mile, it's really recommended that the rod bearings are changed on them, especially if you don't know the history of that car. If you're looking to buy an M5 example, which got higher mileage on it, maybe you need to factor in putting a set of rod bearings in. Also, what are the discs and pads like? What are the tyres like? It's real easy to find that you've got to put £5,000–6,000 into a car if there are things like valve stem seals or rod bearings, or you need 4 tyres all round, brakes and discs. That's really going to bump up the price. When you're buying a car, if you can find one that's had these things done and the car's already been looked after, that means over the next 12 months, you're going to have to put a lot less in the car, keeping it tip top. Okay, so the things I've told you so far apply to most cars. Don't really have to be a genius to figure those out. Let's get more specific about this particular chassis, this particular engine, and go through the bits on this. So you pop open the engine bay, what do you want to be looking for? Well, firstly, we've got a hot and cold coolant system. The cooler system on this side is for the ECUs and the charge coolers. Open it up, have a look in there. Is the level full? If the coolant is not like a greeny bluey colour, it hasn't got the right coolant in it. Across here and here, we've got our PCVs. Lift up the cover, have a look. Are these PCVs weeping? Have they got cracks in them? Do they look good? And more importantly, the turbo cooler lines. Have a look across those. Is there any splits in them? Have you got stains across the heat shield? Because that's something you're going to need to be changing if you look there and you can see they've split, obviously. Also, we've got the ECUs underneath the engine cover, which, if we lift that out the way, just about. These ECUs, back in like 2017, 2018, when these cars were first tunable, people used to drill a little hole in the cases or open the case up. Make sure that that's bunged up properly if it's been done. Make sure that it's sealed up properly. Otherwise, you could find that you've got a failed ECU once the winter months come around. It's also a clear indication if the car's been tuned and maybe you haven't been told about it. If you're not sure whether the car's stage 2 or not, or whether it's got a set of catless pipes, most of the downpipes out there don't fit particularly well. Our ones fit perfect, but not everyone has those. And a good indication is taking that engine cover off and having a look at where the lambda sensors are. Most of the time the cups won't be there, as in this case, or you'll find that the heat shield may have even had to be bent out of the way to get them to come through. Real quick way to tell if a car's stage 2, if you can't tell by the extra noise it's producing. A lot of these cars, when they first become tunable, had too much torque through them. The clutches got damaged. If you're trying to check the health of the clutch, the easiest way to check for a judder is to put it into reverse and go backwards. The box is not the smoothest out there, but if there's any damage on those clutch plates, a lot of the time you'll get a judder as you pull away. The reason why you feel it in reverse is because it's using a different clutch pack from what you were using first. So when it comes to the inside of the car, 3 things you can be checking. First one is the oil level. You can check that on the iDrive. If the car is stone cold, it's going to take 20 to 30 minutes before it's going to let you actually measure it because the oil needs to be hot. The second one is check your aircon's working. It's really easy to buy a car in the winter, the summer comes around and you find out you've got no aircon. Well, on the F10s, the condensers can play up on them, so it's something you want to be looking out for. And thirdly, have a feel around the carpet. Pull up the passenger carpet, have a feel around there. There's a big plastic grommet and they're prone to failure, and when they go, the carpets get soaked and they're a bit of a pig to get to. So there's 3 things to look out for inside the car. As well as the rod bearings, there is another thing to look out for in these engines, and it is the valve stem seals. Now, on a car that got its cat steel, it's really hard to pick up on. You're just going to have an increase in oil consumption, which of course you can't really check when you're just looking at a car. But if they don't have any cats in them, if you let the car sit there for a while and you give it a blip of the throttle, you get a load of blue smoke coming out the back, that's normally a clear indication that those valve stem seals have had it, they're perished, and they're going to need to be changed. For that job to be done properly, the engine needs to be dropped out. It's not a 5-minute job, and it is something to look out for. If you're looking at a car and maybe you're trying to work out what's standard and what's not, there's a few things that are very common modifications on these. One of them is air intakes. One of the other common mods that we see is H&R springs, just to lower it down a little bit. Another common mod that can be a bit of a confusion for people is exhaust tips. There's a lot of exhaust tips out there that are marked up as being particular brands, and people think they're getting a full exhaust system, and it's just a tip. So if you're looking at a car and it's got a particular exhaust tip on it, have a look at it and make sure that you're not just buying a car with a standard system and a set of tips. It's okay if you are, but you need to know. Other common bits that we tend to see on these are diffusers, front splitters, and wind mirror caps. But the springs, the exhaust systems and the intakes are modifications that can be on the cars that people buy and they're not even aware that they've been done. We've gone over the car, everything's looking pretty solid with it, but what's the other checks that we could be doing with the car? Well, firstly, talk to the owner. How often is it using oil? What oil was being used on the car? Can you get your hands on a diagnostics machine, maybe something like Bimacode or Carly? Scan it out. Although there's no errors on the dash, there may should be some errors stored in the car, and they may give you an indication of a problem that you may find once you get it home. Get onto the test drive. Now, with these cars, it is common for them to have a little bit of a wastegate rattle. The way to tell if it is a wastegate rattle, if you're hearing something as you're coming on and off the throttle, is change the throttle into Sport Plus, and you should find that that noise goes away. Unfortunately, that is a common thing with these. It's just the way that the wastegate system works. On some cars, that wastegate can be completely worn, and there are aftermarket bushings and titanium parts that you can put in to stop that. Once you're out on a test drive, you need to be able to use some of the power of this car. This car could be working perfectly when you're driving in a moderate way, but you could find up at the top of third gear at 100% throttle, it breaks up and it's got a misfire. It could be something as stupid as spark plugs, or you could find that there's actually low compression on the engine and it's something that the owner did know about. Always try to do as many checks as possible, and that includes having a good feel of things on a test drive. Test drive ain't just for you to enjoy the car, the test drive's for you to see if there's anything wrong with it as well. When it comes to the F10 M5, there's a few variants out there. So in the UK, they've all got a DCT box in them, but you can get a pre-LCI, you can get an LCI, you get a Euro 5 or a Euro 6, or you get a non-comp or a comp. So starting off with the pre-LCI and the LCI, most of the 2012s and early 2013s are pre-LCIs. The pre-LCI has a slightly uglier wheel as standard. The iDrive system is older variant, and the headlights have like this really cool honeycomb effect on the edges. They then had the LCIs, which were released in 2013. They have a nicer looking steering wheel. They have a more modern iDrive system on them. And like I say, the headlights are different. Then around 2014, they went from Euro 5 to Euro 6. So to most people, that's not going to make much difference. But the Euro 6 has a different injector. It uses a different spark plug. And you have sports display up on the iDrive, and the ECUs are different. As I say, with the sports display, if you're trying to work out whether it's a 5 or 6, look for the sports display on the iDrive, and then take the car for a drive and make sure the needles are moving. You can make them gauges show on a Euro 5, but they won't work. So even if they're showing, it doesn't confirm that 100% in a Euro 5 car. And then the last thing is whether it's a non-comp or a competition. Now, if it's competition, they came with different wheels. The suspension was lower. The power steering was a little bit faster, so you had a faster steering rack, you have a stiffer anti-roll bar, and they make a little bit more power as standard. So that's the three differences, and then some of the optional extras that the cars can come with, I'm going to list on the screen as well. Lastly, let's talk about mileage. So on these cars, when they first came out, tons of them had mileage blockers in them, I'm afraid, and you might think you're buying a 20, 30,000 mile example, but it could be a 50, 60,000 mile example, and maybe you'd be having to put a set of rod bearings in it if you knew what the true mileage of the car was. Now, sometimes with things like Carly, you can check the mileage on other modules and you can get an indication that it's been played with on the dash, but Also, have a visual look around things. Look at the MOT history, look at the service history. If a car's had 3 oil changes in a year, but they're saying it's only done 2,000–3,000 miles, that doesn't add up. Same things for the brakes and discs and the tyres. Also, have a look in the car. What's the bolster wear like on the seat? What condition is the steering wheel in? Have a look. If a car is a 20,000 mile car or 30,000 mile car, the interior and the condition of the car should reflect that. That is my buyer's guide for the F10 M5. Now, if you've got an F10 M5 and you want to know what the service routine is, have a look on our website. If you're looking at tuning one, have a look at our other YouTube videos, or again, have a look at our website. If you are into M5s and you haven't seen any of my other videos, give me a like, give me a subscribe, and you'll see that I'm out with lots more content in the future.